Thankfully, the coronavirus is no longer the all-consuming 24-hour-a-day news item. Now it has been replaced by protests all over the country, but the focus is on the widespread looting, vandalism, and violence, because, frankly, it makes for better cell phone videos. It seems tone deaf for me to just talk about the Bible when so much is going on in the world around us, something like that image of an elephant in the room. There's a lot that can be said about all this, and there's a lot that the Bible talks about that relates to this. So where do we begin? Well, let's start with racism. It seems to be the single underlying cause of everything that is wrong in our country. At the very bottom, I see two separate issues, one more basic than the other. If we can get that one right, we can fix the other. If we don't get the first one right, we will never fix the other. The single most basic issue in racism is simply about liking people. People keep hollering about ending racism, but how do you propose to do that? The government cannot make you like people. They can move them into your neighborhood. Some people will make friends with them, and others will just move out. They've been trying that for 50 years, and they admit it just hasn't made any difference. They call that segregation. I don't. A segregated school is not a school that is all black or all white. It's only segregated when people of other colors aren't allowed to attend there. That's what makes segregation. But this is a Bible study. Matthew 22:35. A lawyer asked Jesus a question. Teacher, which is the great commandment in the law? And he said, you shall love the Lord your God with all your heart, and with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the great and foremost commandment. The second is like it. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. On these two commandments depend the whole law and the prophets. Christians talk a lot about knowing God's will. Well, here are the two most important things to do. Don't worry about the other stuff until you get this right. We often don't think of love as something that you can be commanded to do. But the word love is used in a number of different ways. I love ice cream. Now, you can't make a person love it or not love it. And no government, no law, and no amount of protest is going to make anybody love or even like anyone else. Now, when it comes to people, there are basically two different dynamics that work here. One is when we generally talk about liking someone. They please us, their looks, their personality. We share a common interest. We enjoy being together. God can't command that, and He doesn't. But Bible love is where you see the value in other people that God does. They are created in God's image. They are higher beings than the angels. God commands us to value people as He does, people that He loved enough to die for them. Now, a secular society or government cannot tell people to love each other. They try with their slogans, we are one, or we are all in this together. But a secular country cannot tell you that people are created in the image of God and are of infinite worth. They talk about ending racism, but how can you do that without actually loving the people involved? And you're not going to be able to do that without God in the Bible. The best they can do is to tolerate everybody, which can mean nothing more than just ignoring them. The second issue here is what is called systemic racism. The system is racist. We have riots protesting for justice and ending racism. The riots will do very little to change anything. Why? Because nobody has defined exactly what problems to fix and how to fix them. Justice for the victim? All 4 men involved have been arrested and charged with serious crimes. But fixing society will be a bit harder. Now, I'm going to say some things that I'm guessing some people are not going to like. I'm sorry. As a Bible teacher, you teach what's there, and we already chose our passage. This lesson has been in my mind for days. I didn't know what it's going to say in this last part, and now I know. Some of you may disagree with this, and I only have a few minutes to present some thoughts. I believe I can make the case fully if you give me an hour. I'm from the Chicago area, so I won't pretend to speak for other towns. I tried to match zip codes here, but one chart showed zip codes and the other neighborhood names. I don't even know if the names match the zip codes. But let me present this to you. Am I oversimplifying things here? I really don't think so. I think maybe we are overcomplicating things. At least in the Chicago area, it seems that the poorest areas are also the highest crime areas. I'm sure that most modern sociologists will say that the high crime rate is due to the level of poverty. I'm going to suggest to you that the level of poverty is due to the high crime rate. Crime is ultimately an offense against people, where God says to love them is the second most important thing you can do. You cannot justify stealing and shooting people because you're having a rough time. If you disagree, tell it to God, because one day you'll have to. And the most important thing you can do is to love God. And He will tell you, if you say you love me, then keep my commandments. And the second most important one is to love your neighbor. You can make a list of all the reasons why an area is in poverty. And that list will seem to have nothing to do with God. I'm expecting that in a lot of these lessons that we will be doing here, that you'll be seeing that very thing, that God does work on nations and groups of people. And He often will use things that look perfectly natural, random, or is due to the decisions of other people. Someone will ask me, well, what about these people over here? And I'll tell you, I don't know. I can only tell you what the Bible says. If you put all the relevant passages together, you'll have a very long list. I'm not expecting any long-lasting changes from these riots and protests that will change the lives of the people affected here without the changes that I'm recommending. We may not have solved all the world's problems here, but I think we made a good start.